she was never my son's wife. I first met Lena the night before the wedding. She arrived late, boots caked in dirt despite the dry weather. My son Daniel had been gushing about her for months. How they met on a forest trail, how she was unlike anyone else, how she made him feel alive again. I expected someone vibrant, warm. Instead, I got her. She was tall, too tall, slender in a way that looked deliberate, like her body had been stretched to fit a mold. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her smile, that's what bothered me most. It came too late. Not like someone reacting to kindness, but like someone mimicking what kindness should look like. But Daniel was glowing, and I'd seen him suffer too much after his mother passed. So I kept my mouth shut and offered my hand. She took it, her grip just a little too firm, her fingers cold. That night, I dreamed of the forest. I was standing at the edge of the woods behind our old house. I recognized the trees, but they felt wrong. Too tall, too still. No sound of wind, no birds, just a deep, unnatural quiet. And then I saw it, a figure, thin, watching me from the dark. I couldn't see its face, but I felt it smiling. I woke drenched in sweat. The next morning, Lena was already in the kitchen, slicing apples into symmetrical pieces with surgical precision. "Did you sleep well, Harold?" she asked. I lied. And I noticed she didn't blink once during our conversation. They got married under the old oak in our backyard. Just family. Lena didn't have anyone. No parents, no friends, not a single soul from her life before Daniel. "Orphan," she said with a light shrug, like it was a minor inconvenience. I found it eerie. People always have someone. During the vows, she never once looked at Daniel. She looked over his shoulder at me, that same too late smile on her lips. After the wedding, things went downhill fast. Daniel stopped calling me Dad, started calling me Harold. He never done that, not even in his worst teenage years. He stopped answering calls. Then came the weight loss, the bags under his eyes, the strange marks on his arms, thin circular bruises like finger imprints. I asked him about them. He laughed nervously and said he'd been sleepwalking, said he bumped into the banister. I started visiting unannounced. Lena always answered the door, always already standing there when I rang. No delay, like she was waiting on the other side. I caught her once in the backyard just standing, arms limp, head tilted toward the sky. No phone, no book, just standing there staring upward at nothing. I called out to her. She didn't move. I had to touch her shoulder before she slowly turned and said, "Is something wrong, Harold?" Daniel barely spoke around her. His words came like he was underwater. Once I stayed late after a Sunday dinner. As Lena cleared the dishes, Daniel looked up at me and whispered, "She doesn't sleep, ever." That night, I sat in my car across the street and waited. Around 2 a.m., Lena walked out of the house barefoot and headed straight into the forest. I followed at a distance. There's a part of the forest that people around here don't go to. Too dense, too quiet. She went straight into it. That's where I saw it. She stood in a clearing I hadn't seen in years. A perfect circle of white mushrooms surrounded her. She began to hum, low and vibrating like the sound came from inside the ground. Then she bent backward, her spine popping like dry wood. Her arms lengthened, her face changed. Not visibly, not like in a movie, but somehow it was no longer human. She opened her mouth and something came out, a long cord, slick and black, wriggling like it had a mind of its own. She dropped it into a hole in the earth. The ground hissed. I ran. But I kept going back. I installed cameras. I collected hours of footage. Most nights were quiet, but every few weeks she'd return to the circle. Each time her rituals grew darker. One night I saw other figures with her, pale, tall, eyes too wide, too black. One of them wore a boy's piece like a mask. It hung loose on the sides. I tried showing Daniel the footage. He watched in silence. When it ended, he looked at me dead-eyed and said, "You shouldn't have seen that." He closed the laptop, and for a moment, I thought I saw his eyes flash black. A week later, he was in the hospital. They said he tried to cut off in his own stomach in the middle of the night. Said he was trying to take something out. The nurses found him on the floor, whispering, "It's crawling his knee." Lena never visited, just stood outside the hospital doors for hours, staring up at the windows. I went to their house while he was gone. I had to see it. I found a locked door in the basement. Behind it, dozens of old yellow photographs. People I didn't recognize. Each photo was labeled with a name and a date, but some had no faces. Literally, someone had scratched them out with it looked like paws. I found one of Daniel has a boy held by his mother. The date read claimed. The walls are covered in symbols, carved, not painted, hundreds of spirals, eyes, teeth. And then I found the nursery. Crib, blankets, mobile, old standard, but above the crib with a merle, a dark forest with figures standing among the trees, watching a house burn. Inside the crib was a small pulsating mass. It looked like flesh. It twitched when I entered the room. I backed out and slammed the door. When I got home, the lights were out. My locks had been changed, and in the center of my kitchen table was a single bloody handprint, too long, with 6 fingers. I tried the police. They laughed, said I was losing it, told me Lena had a clean record. Daniel had no complaints, and if I showed up at their house again, I'd be arrested. I tried to burn the footage. The fire went on halfway and refused to relight. The teeth were unharmed. I buried them in the woods. The next day, they were on my doorstep. I tried to leave town. My car died 3 miles out. Flat tires, no signal. When I looked up, Lena was walking toward me from the trees, smiling. I stopped sleeping. I started hearing her voice in my dreams. She'd whisper names I didn't recognize. Sometimes I'd wake up with Mother in my hand. Once I found a tooth and a armadillo. It wasn't mine. Daniel came to me last week. I barely recognized him. His eyes were hollow. He said, "She's going to give birth on the full moon, and I think it's going to be me." I didn't undo that. He lifted his shirt. His stomach was distended, writhing from within. He said, "She put it in me, not in the way you think. It's old. It's remembering itself through me." I cried. He laughed. He said, "I can hear it thinking. It hates you." The next day, Daniel disappeared. Lena told the police he'd wandered off. She said he had a history of delusions. They believed her. Tonight is the full moon. She came to my house an hour ago. She didn't knock, just opened the door and stood there. She said, "Would you like to see your grandchild, Harold?" She stepped aside. Behind her stood a thing wearing Daniel's thin like a skull. It smiled. Its mouth was filled with teeth. Its eyes were older than I. I ran, but I know I can't hide. This house isn't mine anymore. My name isn't mine anymore. My blood isn't mine. She took everything. I write this now as the sun rises.
I don't know if I will survive today, but if you're reading this, if you ever meet a woman with no past, no people, and a smile that comes too late, run! She's still out there, and she is looking for a father-in-law.